GM, we are live. Welcome back to the SolanaFloor weekly recap, everyone. Having a little bit of a technical difficulty here. We are going to unpack Solana's top 6 stories as we do every week. I'm joined, of course, by our senior journalist, Mr. Finn Miller. Finn, GM, so how are we doing?
GM Jack, very, very good. Thank you. It's been a wild week. We've had all kinds of dramas on the timeline. Markets are starting to pull back after a bullish surge at the start of the week. But yeah, it's all happening in the markets today.
Certainly is. Mr. Thomas Bahamas from just across the pond also joins us as always. How are we doing, sir?
GM, I am doing great. You know, it's one of those Fridays where I don't know if we can pack as much information as been going on this week, right? There's a ton to go over, so I'm excited to get into it.
Absolutely. We also have a bit of an update from the podcast land, don't we, TB?
Yes, we sure do. So thank you for reminding me. So we got a big announcement, right? So we've been working on putting our podcast together. We are live on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. And now the solana.com/podcast website. I wanted to start the stream out and give a huge shout out to Harkle for helping us with this, the Jester Maxter of Solana. So, you know, this is it's pretty exciting stuff for me. You know, that's I'm a little bit more of a boomer, so I listen to a lot of podcasts through those platforms. So this is big for me. So I'm excited for that, and big shout out to Harkle.
Absolutely. So thank you very much to Harkle for all of his hard work. We're going to dive into the newsletter in just a second. Finn has written 6 banger stories for us, covered them in his newsletter as always. While I fix my camera, I'm going to do a quick little price update here for everyone because I think it's the beginning of something that could potentially be quite big. We're seeing prices move upwards. Finally, BTC was above 80K for quite a while. Sol briefly touched $98. So very, very close to that psychological $100 level. And a lot of people on the timeline are asking, are we back? Is this the beginning of something? Can we get a timeline vibe check from both of you? What do you think? What do you feel?
My initial gut reaction is that we're not quite back just yet. I think we've had a nice bit of relief. Obviously, we've been trending down for a very long time. That had to stop eventually. But you know, I think circumstances haven't really changed that much out there in the world. I think there's still a lot of uncertainty out there. We've definitely enjoyed this kind of 15-20% bump up across the entire market, but I'm not completely convinced that we're heading all the way back up to new all-time highs anytime soon. Thomas, what's your reading?
Yeah. Look, we were talking yesterday on the big picture how I went on vacation last week and all my coins pumped. Well, I came back from vacation this week and it looks like they did not continue to pump. So it wasn't, the continuation from last week that we thought. And I mean, if you look at the news, I would have expected things to keep going, right? Like good news out of China, US and China met, it seemed positive. Was it really? We don't know. Clarity Act, it looks like, there's a very high chance of it passing this month, right? I think that's what the Poly Market said. So it's like we're hearing the positive news and then the prices are kind of tanking a little bit. So who knows what's really going on? The liquidity might just not be there yet. But as we like to say here, long term, these are all bullish. It's like bullish momentum, right? So hopefully that catches up at some point.
Yeah, like for me, it's one of those funny things where as soon as the good news stops moving the price, we know we've probably hit a top. And on the other hand, when bad news stops dropping price, we know we're at the bottom. So it feels a bit like we're in this kind of limbo point at the moment. I wouldn't be surprised if we started trending back downwards again for a couple of months. But look, markets have a way of humbling people, and we never really seem to know what we're going to get. But look, let's dive straight into the newsletter. It has been a peculiar week, to say the least. I've obviously been a big advocate of the Solana Perps scene for a very, very long time, and it seems like we're finally getting a bit of momentum. We're finally getting a bit of action, but a lot of that is just coming purely from theatrics on the timeline. So Phoenix and GMTrade have both recorded new all-time highs in daily volume. Solana's Perps in general is hitting all-time highs again. We're at 1010 levels of volume, which at 1010 it was obviously a crisis because there was absolute chaos being ripped through the markets in general. Now markets are a lot more stable and we're getting that volume flow back. But again, there's not really enough open interest to keep it afloat at the moment. So I think there's a few caveats there that we do need to explore later on. Otherwise, the Clarity Act is one step closer to being signed into law. Very, very encouraging. Look, people have been saying that the Clarity Act for a very long time is going to be the thing that opens the floodgates to institutional capital. The process has been long. There has been a lot of arguments back and forth. but it seems that we are advanced through the Senate committee and it's going to the Senate floor next. So still a lot of work that has to be done there, but very, very encouraging. Thomas, you were speaking with people on the big picture about the Cloud Act yesterday. What was your biggest takeaway from that discussion?
Yeah, so we had Harriet on from Twin Stake, right? So first of all, it was a fantastic conversation. You guys should definitely check it out. But we kind of hit her with a lot of these questions. We're like, hey, there's a lot of like positive sentiment. You know, there's a lot of good regulation, and she said that the institutions are a little bit more like they're kind of waiting to see how things play out. They're not instantly aping in the moment there's good news. So I like while the institutions are here and they, we spent all of 2025 basically catering to institutions, they're here, but they're not necessarily buying, the news on every little thing here. Right. So they're a little bit more measured, which we actually like, right? When you look at ETFs, they've been buying a lot of the SOL ETFs and they've been holding, right? They're not selling, which is a good thing. But they're not necessarily aping on this news. I ultimately think that a lot of the regulations matter more to a lot of the institutions and big players. So I think once clarity does get signed, again, it's extremely positive, right? Like this is a big move in the right direction. Where just last year everything was in the market was in a gray area where we didn't know what was illegal and what wasn't. Where we need what this is called. We need some clarity. For clarity to pass. And so I'm excited about it, but price doesn't reflect it.
Price doesn't, and we are back. What's the point of doing a live stream if you're not going to have some technical difficulties, right? we have fixed it, shifted some cables around. We're back. I think it's time to dive into story number one. Let's get some clarity on what's happening over in Solana's very heated, very contentious perps scene. Finn's got some banger tweets in there, but let's start with the headline here. Phoenix Trade records all-time high in daily volume as perceived favoritism divides Solana community. Finn, this has been an ongoing debate for a while. Things got really spicy for a hot minute there as well. I want to take people's minds back for a bit of context here to Chase's 5,500-word essay, which he wrote, basically laying out the ground rules, the rules of engagement, and the problems as far as he sees it, what's wrong with the Solana perp scene, how these things can be fixed, that fixed everything from market structure to actual execution, so on and so forth. Banger article, essay, if you want to call it that. Here we are, I think a month and a half, almost 2 months later, things are happening, both on the technical front and on the marketing front. Finn, why have people got so angry about this story? And then let's dive into the meat and potatoes of it as well, please.
Yes, so all the dramas began earlier this week when, Tolly, bless him, and the Foundation Army have all stepped in and they're really gunning for Phoenix to take over and become Solana's leading perp dex. Now, there's a lot of reasons for this. Obviously, it's a fantastic platform. I've traded there for the last few months myself, and I have found it to be quite a pleasant experience. But look, Totally has rubbed a few people the wrong way because he's acting like a reply guy, going into random comments all across Twitter and telling them to try out Phoenix Trade. Now, for a lot of people, this seems a bit unfair to a lot of Solana's other perp dexes that have been building for a very, very long time. A lot of hyperliquid maxis have responded back to Totally and saying, look, you've got $3 million worth of volume per day. This emerging perp dex cannot compete with the likes of hyperliquid. And yeah, it's causing a lot of drama. A lot of people across Solana are saying that Tolly and the foundation and all the other ecosystem leaders need to be showing a bit more support to other perp dexes. As good as Phoenix is, there's a lot of excellent other alternatives that people can be showing attention to. And the word kingmaking got thrown around a lot. So look, it's definitely a sensitive subject for a lot of people. People, saying that the foundation should remain neutral. Other people have come out and said the foundation should put its eggs into the basket that they believe has the most chance of success. Tushar Jain, I believe, the co-founder of Multicoin Capital, who's been one of the biggest backers of Solana since the earliest days, said that foundation should not be neutral. It is justified in spending its finite resources on teams that help Solana succeed. But look, yeah, the alternatives, dexes like Pacifica, there's an argument that they're not, actually on the Solana layer 1. So a lot of that value accrual that happens through Pacifica doesn't actually get passed back to Solana. So that's why a lot of foundation, a lot of labs team members are championing Phoenix. So there's really a lot to unpack here. We can get into the volume and the open interest later on, but Thomas, I want to throw it to you first. Do you think that it's justified for the foundation to lend so much to sports to Phoenix Trade instead of trying to give everyone the thumbs up at the right moment?
So I think it is. Like I feel for the teams that aren't getting the marketing and the push that Phoenix is right now. But like the way that I've been thinking about this is, let's say we lose the perps war. Let's say Solana never comes up with a good competitor, and we're looking back at this time, a year from now, and every single person in the community would be mad that the foundation, that even Vibu didn't do anything, right now. Like we're behind when it comes to perps, so they need to do something, and this is what they're doing. They're finding, I mean, I don't know, how much they're investing in it, but it seems like there is a massive marketing push for Phoenix, which is the best, or maybe not the best, but like a very good on-chain matching perps decks.
And arguably, that marketing push has yielded results, right? A lot of
Yeah.
attention, for better or worse. I mean, people say, okay, there's no publicity is bad publicity. At the end of the day, a bunch of people that maybe weren't tempted to try it before have gone and said, let's give it a try. So it looks like something is working.
It sure is. And I mean, some of it is rage baiting, and some of it might not be like the classiest way to go after it. But I mean, if you look at the results of this, like, it's working. So I guess, like, with that in mind, like, I'm all for it. I love seeing Toli in the replies. Like, it reminded me of the early days of Solana, when he would just like go in and just like bicker with people about like tiny little technical details, and he was everywhere. So I love seeing that. I like seeing the takes on it, and I think that they have to do it. I think that we're in a place where like that is one of the biggest opportunities for Solana right now, is to compete on perps. Like,
speaking of the early days, though, I think what's sort of rubbed people the wrong way, and Finn's sliding through some of the tweets here on screen as well, is that we used to have this sort of wag me energy, right, in the early days, and now we're sort of forced to pick winners. And this is a direct result of Hyperliquid launching an amazing product that just works and people want to use it, massive amounts of open interest because it works. So now people are understandably a little bit frustrated because it's no longer all boats are sort of being rising in the tide. We unfortunately have to pick a winner. So I understand both sides of the argument. My sort of take on it at the moment is, okay, people have been rubbed the wrong way. Clearly, Foundation has the right to decide what they're going to do with their finite time, energy, resources. They've made that very clear. But where are we going to be in 3 months from now? That's my question. If all of this works and Solana is in a much better place in terms of perps, then you've got to piss some people off to get to where you need to get to, I think. But if it doesn't work, then those salty people are really going to be scurrying out onto the timeline, I think, and putting out some more frustrated tweets.
Yeah, there's a lot of eyes on Phoenix Trade right now, and at this point, they need to deliver. There's so much attention, they've received so much support that anything less than crushing Solana's perps game and rising right to the top, I would perceive as a failure. They're going to have their work cut out for them. There's a lot of great perp sixes coming out in the coming months. But look, I think while it's very exciting that perps volume on Solana has hit all-time highs. It's at the highest levels it's been since that 1010 disaster. A lot of it is, I would say, wash trading. Open interest just has not been able to keep up with the volume. So if I jump back to this tab here, we can see that the average of Solana's Solana's perps volume to open interest ratio is 9 times higher than what the volume is. So on somewhere like Hyperliquid, volume is actually lower than open interest. So what we have is we have got a huge amount of traders sending huge amounts of volume through perp dexes, but they're not holding positions. They're not committed to a thesis. They're not actually waiting for their trades to play out. They're essentially just going back and forth between assets and trying to get their volume up as high as possible. Now, in many cases, this is usually inspired by incentives. So on somewhere like GMTrade, for example, if you trade, you get GT points. One day there's going to be a token, and hopefully, you can redeem your GT points for tokens. Look, this high volume, I'm not convinced that it's genuine organic trading activity. And we can see this across every single Solana Perps dex there. So, as we've said, Hyperliquid, the the open interest is higher than the volume. Everywhere else on Solana, the volume is still a lot higher than the open interest. So I think we're lacking a bit of maturity in that regard. And there's a long way to go before we are organically competitive at this level.
Yeah. Would you say that that is a good advertisement to get people on these platforms though? Because we've seen airdrops and farming are, some of the best ways to actually get users, right? Is that what's needed to be done? Like, are people testing out the platforms right now and, maybe putting out a few orders and that's what we're seeing, and maybe not necessarily moving all of their trading over there, but, maybe they're following Toli's advice and just trying it.
Yeah, this is the most interesting aspect of this whole story for me in many ways, because Phoenix at the moment is really suffering from a cold start problem. If you want to attract serious traders, you need to have serious liquidity depth. You need to have a lot of volume and activity already there. Without an incentives campaign, it's very, very difficult to bring traders in the first place. Phoenix has been quite adamant that they're not going to do a token. They're not going to run, this whole airdrop point system that has become ubiquitous across the industry so far. Whether they, turn around from that in, months or years ahead, nobody really knows. In this case, they're saying they're not going to do a token. So people aren't really willing to start deploying capital and start trying out trading on this venue when there's other venues that will be rewarding them to do that. So without having this retail trader base that's already there, the market makers and the high frequency traders and these big players don't really also see the reason to go and hop on the sticks and start, providing capital and start making markets, because there's no retail traders there to harvest and to, make money off in the trading scene. So
I'm really curious what our listeners think of this lack of incentive system at the moment. If anyone is listening, is genuinely incentivized by these point systems and has said, look, I'm only going to trade here because there's a point system, and perhaps when I've got enough points, then maybe I'll go and try Phoenix. Do let us know. I'm really curious if there are people that think that way. And I'm also curious where you think Solana's perp scene is going to be in 3 months from now. So a little bit of a open question for the both of you guys. 3 months from now, is Phoenix going to be the clear winner in Solana's perp scene, do we think?
I think yes. So I think one interesting part of this, you kind of mentioned, farming a little bit. I think first of all, the perps dexes is probably like where people should be farming right now. But I also just think that a lot of other platforms are going to be looking at Phoenix and they're going to be using their infrastructure. Like I believe that JTX is going to be using them. And I know that, what's it called? Check Price that Mert is building. He's going to be using Phoenix on the back end. So, maybe they're not going to be directly releasing a token, but, that's a pretty big opportunity if you want to build a perps dex, use their infrastructure and offer a token, right? So I don't know if any of those are, obviously, but I think that there is I just think the opportunity is so big. I think in 3 months it's going to keep growing.
Yeah. I'm obviously very optimistic on Phoenix. I think it is a good product. I would like to see more volume flow there. At the same time, I think in the coming months, if another perps dex, with a similar execution standard and incredible product does launch and does have incentives that inspire and attract traders, both of the retail variety and at an institutional scale level, I think, newcomers could come in and steal the lunch that is waiting to be munched. Because look, GMTrade is there doing $4 or $5 billion a day. Whether that's all entirely genuine, I'm not convinced. Pacifica has been there for a very long time. They've been dominating volumes for a while. They have a points campaign, So look, if one of these new emerging dexes comes out, they've got a great incentives campaign. They're going to roar straight to the top, I think. So look, 3 months time, it's a very open playing field for whoever wants to go in and take that prize.
Yeah, and I also think that, with the Solana Foundation kind of pumping Phoenix a bit, I'd say, if one perps dex rises, I think it rises all of them, right? Like, let's say they're promoting Phoenix and bulk comes out and bulk execution is way better. That's a big opportunity for them as well. I think that actually increases the ceiling for anybody that's launching right now or anybody that has a product that's launching something new, right?
Well, ultimately, I think what Finn was saying there is really, really true. It's not just one group of users that Phoenix needs to attract, or any one of these emerging Solana perps dexes needs to attract. It's both sides of the aisle, so to speak. And it's going to be really, really interesting to see what ends up being the main catalyst to bring people over from Hyperliquid. Because if it works, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, I think really holds true. So curious to see what the main catalyst is going to be. What I think we should do, and I'm curious what our audience thinks about this, we should probably go and test all of these Solana Perps dexes out, have some screen recordings, do a little walkthrough, see how the execution works, how quick it is, what sort of fills we're getting. Off the top of my head, we have Phoenix, GMTrade you mentioned there, Pacifica, Bulk. Maybe we'll throw in a little Hyperliquid tutorial walkthrough in that as well. A little bit of a screen recording. What do you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a great idea. I think people, a lot of Solana in general are not perps traders. They're spot traders, they're meme coin traders. And this is actually unfamiliar territory for them. So yeah, any kind of educational material, I think, would go a long way.
All right. Yeah, we'll work on that. We'll let people know. And if we did miss any perps dexes that people are using or any venues at all, then let us know in the comments, obviously. I think it's probably time we start talking about question number 2. It's been looming for months and months and months. It sort of lingered over from the late stages of last year. And we are, of course, talking about the Clarity Act because it just cleared the Senate Banking Committee. Drum roll. Question is, what happens next? So, Digital Asset Market Clarity Act passed the Senate Banking Committee 15-9. Absolutely insane scenes in the US. First time in history, obviously, that this has happened, that it's cleared the Senate Committee. Polymarket odds, you'll be happy to hear, now at 71% of this passing in 2026. Now, we've been talking about this for months and months for one reason. If it doesn't happen, if the Clarity Act didn't pass until November, there was a very serious looming risk that Democrats would essentially derail it because they associate this particular piece of legislation with Trump's, they call it crypto corruption, but Trump's ability to profit directly from the crypto industry. So there was this big fear that they would pull on that lever and essentially derail the legislative process. Then we had another bit of a roadblock. Big banks in the US turned around and lobbied very, very aggressively against stablecoin yields, basically trying to protect their own bottom line. So a lot of things have happened. It's been a very windy, meandering road, but I feel like we're very, very nearly there. Although, Finn, I'm curious what you think. Walk us through the story. Are we finally at the finish line, or are we not quite there yet?
Yeah, unfortunately, we're not quite at the finish line. The Clarity Act has been advanced through the Senate committee. Now it is going to the Senate floor. And in yesterday's markup, I believe that only one Democrat actually crossed the floor to join the Republicans and try and start pushing this Clarity Act across the line. If they want to get Clarity across the line, get it signed into law, they're going to have to convince a lot more Democrats that the ethics and conflicts of interest problems that are loitering around this bill are not quite sufficient yet to get support from the Democrats. So there's still a lot that has to happen for this to go ahead. I'm relieved that the stablecoin issue has been solved. While you can't get passive yield anymore, you can get activity-based rewards. So for anyone who's active in crypto, we're all pretty familiar with how this works. Maybe you've got to send some transactions. Maybe you've got to deposit some money somewhere. But as long as you're participating in this economy, you're probably still going to get your yield sufficiently well. So that's encouraging. But otherwise, yeah, look, it's very exciting. I think Polymarket is saying now that we're at about a 71% chance of this going through before the end of the year. That all hinges on what happens on the Senate floor and how well that the language of the Clarity Act starts pertaining to the conflict of interest that we've been seeing around the Trump cabal. So look, there's a lot that still has to happen here. Thomas, you're over in the US on the ground. What's your read on this?
Yeah, so first of all, I've been watching some of the hearings, like a lot of it's been posted on X. I've been watching them, and it's amazing how bullish some of these senators are on crypto. like they're way more pro crypto than I would have imagined it. Obviously, Elizabeth Warren has like some crazy ways to say that it's going to blow up the economy or whatever. But I mean, overall, like everything is positive. Trump even said that he's going to be signing it soon, get it passed. They are kind of working through the last details. And, I think it's the Coin Center. Was it Peter and Niraj from there? They tweeted out like their analysis from it. And I mean, it's looking pretty positive, right? Like there was like a few final points of contention. It seems like a lot of like the big points that some of the Democrats came out with, they just kind of overlooked them, right? Like they didn't even acknowledge them as like, hey, we're not even going to address that. We're voting it down. So I don't know. I mean, it seems positive. It'd be nice to just kind of like get this passed so we don't even have to talk about it anymore at this point, right?
Fingers crossed it happens soon as well, because yeah, as we were saying, it's been a lingering topic, and the more open discussion there is, I think the higher the likelihood of it sort of veering off towards the ethics side of it, rather than the bulk of the discussion, which so far has been, to what extent do we want to limit the ability of actual decentralized organizations while sort of limiting centralized actors. Also, quick shout out to our designer, Darren, by the way. Look at that thumbnail. Brilliant design. It's brilliant. It's so good. Now, if anybody wants to actually go and see some of the debates that have been happening, you can find some of it on SolanaFloor. You can just scroll through X. I'm sure on the timeline you'll see it as well. Some interesting debates were happening between Senator Elizabeth Warren and people on the other side of the discussion who obviously want to get this thing done as quickly as possible. But at the end of the day, as Thomas was saying, the energy around this is relatively positive at the moment. And the main framing that I keep coming back to, I believe this was a tweet from Matt Hogan, but I could be wrong there. He said, without clarity passing, everything that this administration has done in terms of moving crypto in the right direction is essentially non-binding, because it then becomes reversible by the next administration. So the vote that happened yesterday definitely doesn't codify this into the law yet, but for the first time, I feel that the finish line with this Clarity Act is sort of finally visible. And with that, any final thoughts on the 71% odds of Polymarket? Is it too high? Is it too low? Is it spot on? What do we think?
I think it's too low at this stage. I would expect to see it more around 80, 85. I think, there's obviously going to be a bit of infighting over this ethics and this conflict of interest. But I think as we get closer to that November deadline, more momentum is going to be made, more progress is going to be made. And, I think we're just going to trend upwards towards a positive resolution on that Polymarket bet.
You heard it here first. TB, do we agree?
Yep, I can't wait for it to pass so that we don't have to care about what the Senate is doing. I was telling you guys before we got on the stream, it's like we didn't get into crypto to follow what's going on in the Senate, right? Just pass this and let us get back to our coins.
Just get it done so we can watch numbers go up. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. It is definitely time. All right, now story number 3. This one's been a bit of a sleeper because while most of Solana DeFi has been struggling, April was obviously a horrible month. 2026 on the whole has been bit difficult, sort of sideways crabby movement. Sanctum quietly is swimming against the tide here, right? So SOL-Denominated TVL is up 17.4% on the year. New quarterly revenue all-time high. Finn, the headline here is Sanctum, SOL-Denominated TVL, and revenue undaunted by 2026 market decline. Talk us through it.
Yes, so Undaunted is correct. Look, Sanctum, everyone knows them, everyone loves them. Sanctum is the fabricator of the white label LST infinite liquidity pool, and Sanctum doesn't care about what's going on in the market. Whether it's rain or shine, whether Bitcoin's 120K or whether it's 80K, Sanctum just continues delivering the most optimized yield to its holders. And look, it's continuing to make revenue. It's continuing to grow its TVL. Doesn't matter if there's bombs going off in the Middle East. Sanctum is continuing to shine. It's been very impressive. We've seen all kinds of terrible DeFi hacks this year, and what that has meant, I think, is that a lot of people, they're a bit jitterish on lending protocols. They're a bit squeamish on complicated yield strategies. I think a lot more people now are just wanting to hold their LSTs in their wallet. They don't want to be risking smart contract security as much as they can. Just hold the LST. Yes, there's a sliver of smart contract risk on that, but it's very minimal compared to depositing in some vaults or other yield strategies. So tremendous work from Phantom, and I think they're going to keep on going. So they've got their mobile app that's launched on the Solana App Store. They're branching that out into iOS and Android as well. So that's taking us away from this crypto native CT hyper degen world, and that's going to where the people are. So the average retail user, they don't really want to be touching 3 different apps to try and get their yield. They just want a cute app in their phone. They load up their SOL, and it just sits there and earns around 8% on the year. So that's very exciting to see that grow on the Solana App Store. And otherwise, they're actually taking a K-shaped approach to this. And Sanctum, speaking at a conference recently, I believe their co-founder Jay mentioned that they're working into developing a Prime desk, which is going to be an institutional platform for Solana staking. And that's also going to include things like collateralization and multiplication of yield and leverage. So look, Sanctum firing on all cylinders. Very, very exciting to see. That TVL keeps going up, that revenue keeps going up, and very, very optimistic on what they're doing next. Thomas, DeFi man in the booth. Are you a holder of INF? Are you a big believer in what's going on over at Sanctum?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of Sanctum, and yes, I'm a holder of INF have held it for quite a while. So I mean, first of all, their app at 8%, it's like better yield than you can get on most of the other LSTs at this point, right? So I'm a fan of that. I'm a fan of LSTs in general, right? You know, if you're holding Sol, you should be staking it, right? You don't want to get inflated down. And I don't know, for me at least, I like to hold LSTs so that I can see them in my wallet, and it's not like gone at a validator where I can't actually just like see it. So I think the LSTs are fantastic. And I mean, in Solana, the Sanctum basically is the protocol that made them instantly swappable, right? You know, you can trade them for, you know, very small amounts. You can get in and out of them very quickly. So I think overall, you know, with where we're at in DeFi, like I'm personally not using that much DeFi right now, but I will continue to hold LSTs, right? Like they're one of, you know, it's weird to say safe DeFi, but it's one of the most safe ways to interact with DeFi at this point. So I have no problem personally holding LSTs. And I mean, why would you not get the best yield, you know, if it's out there? So I'm a fan of it. What about yourself, Finn?
Yeah, look, I've been very impressed with the INF V2 product that they've recently launched. So historically, LSTs, they attribute yield on a per epoch basis. So, you know, the INF V2 is actually really ramped up the stakes on there, and that yield gets distributed per slot. So if you're holding INF, your yield is actually getting compounded pretty much every 400 milliseconds instead of every 2 days. So that makes a massive difference over time. And as you can see there on the screen, compared to something like B and Sol, you're actually getting a whole lot more value on your Sol by holding an INF instead of any other LST. So look, it's been a great proof of concept. I think it was very clever to compound that over on a per slot basis instead of a per epoch basis. And that's going to pay out dividends for people who hold INF long term. Jack, I'm going to throw it to you. Do you think that the prime desk that Sanctum is targeting is probably a good next step? Because I would argue that, you know, they've almost solved the LSTs on Solana. They've done an incredible job building out the infinity liquidity pool for now. Where do they go to next? Is the prime desk the answer there, or is you know, do you think they would find greater success in something like the retail mobile?
So two reasons why I think it's a genius decision. Firstly, the Seeker app is live. If you want from the retail side, you just basically 3 clicks and you can get your 8% APY. They've done an amazing job with that app. So really simplifying the staking process for retail. Also, there is a waiting list, but the iOS and Android apps are coming soon as well. You can get those, I think, on the Sanctum website. There's a wait list. Now, that's the retail side of it. The second reason why I think this is a genius move. Yesterday, we were speaking to Harriet Browning, who's, I think, VP of Global Sales at TwinStake, institutional staking infrastructure provider. They have something like over $1 billion worth of SOL delegations. We asked her what is an underutilized, underappreciated aspect of DeFi that institutions are slowly becoming interested in. And without much hesitation, she said liquid staking. So clearly these institutions are starting to realize, hey, look, okay, there are risks in DeFi, but I'm not just going to buy SOL and stake it through, you know, a delegated staking provider. I'm actually going to go explore things like liquid staking. How can I put funds on chain, put these funds to use and earn more yield? And I think Sanctum's in a pretty good position because of the brand trust that they have now with Solana's retail participants to go out and branch out. And I think this is going to work for them. Curious to see which sort of institutions are going to be jumping on this, though. That's always the question, right? There's interest from the institutions for a long time, and then all it takes is one big institution to, I think, dip their toes into it, and the floodgates will probably open. What do we think?
Yeah, I think it's great. And, you know, from what Harriet was saying, a lot of the institutions that are deploying big funds, they want to know more details about where these funds are going, right? So you almost need something like a prime desk to actually explain, like, hey, like, this is where your funds are going. This is our security protocols. They're top of the line. This is what matters. So I think the move's genius, and I think it's probably needed for like that type of buyer at this point, right?
Definitely. We will be following Sanctum's updates. Again, the waitlist is open for the iOS and Android app. So if you are a retail user and you want to get your simple 8% APY, it's a pretty good way of doing it. We also have a video on SolanaFloor's YouTube account on just sort of a walkthrough of how you can get that done. So it takes about 2 minutes. Now, story number 4. This one's from Pablo. And I want to give a massive shout out to Pablo because he's been following what Jupiter does very, very closely. And I find it difficult to follow what Jupiter does closely because there's so much happening. These guys ship constantly. There's always an update. But shout out to Pablo. Finn, you cover them very, very closely as well. But this one's a banger. Let's get into what they're doing here. Headline is Jupiter brings Bitwise on-chain with $200 million of institutional USDe market on Solana. You've seen plenty of tweets, I'm sure, about this over the last couple of days. Shout out to Bitwise as well. BSOL, we mentioned that there. Matt Hogan is a previous guest of the Big Picture show. So we like Bitwise, we like Jupiter, and this seems like a very logical partnership. Finn, why have people been loving this as much as they have?
Yeah, Jack, listen, people have been loving this as much as they have because we've got three of the biggest names in crypto all coming together to give Solana users a product that they will love. So Jupiter obviously needs no introduction to the Solana audience. Bitwise, the issuers of the largest Solana ETF, and Athena, one of the EVM world's biggest stablecoins, biggest yield-bearing delta-neutral stablecoins. So these three titans of the crypto industry have all pulled together. JupiterLend has deployed a $200 million USDe vault, and if you're a DeFi player, you can deposit there. You can multiply the leverage on that. I think they're getting around 20% APY for people who want to run that one up. And it's looking like it's had a great success. So far, the total supply in this vault is already at 424 million. And look, it's going to keep growing. I think Athena also partnered with Camino to do a similar thing. And it's great to see more capital coming to DeFi, more yield flows coming into Solana DeFi. And, Athena is an absolute titan over on Ethereum. It's great to see them bridging over to Solana as well in some way, shape, or form. The Sunrise team from Wormhole, they've also launched the ENA token over on Solana too. So there's lots going on here. Thomas, do you think it's exciting that we've got teams like Bitwise starting to deploy capital on chain via Athena and Jupiter like this?
Yeah, 100%. It's definitely exciting. It was 430 million, and was that in one day that they had that much?
It's in probably 24, 36 hours, I would say.
That is wild. I mean, the demand speaks for itself, right? Like that is an insane amount of money. So, and I think, did Jupiter cross $2 billion in TVL as well?
Ooh, I'm not sure.
I think I saw that. We'll have to fact check that, but
I'll take your word for it. I wouldn't be surprised because Jupiter is just they're firing on all cylinders. They're doing so much. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they cross 2 billion now.
Yeah, I mean their lend product in general just took off like wildfire right when they released it. So I mean this is exciting. I mean, when big teams like this are coming together, that's awesome. I don't know that much about Athena, but I mean it looks like I need to get into it. I mean, if you are looking at getting yield on your stables, this seems like a fantastic way to do it. I obviously don't know everything about the stablecoin and don't know too much about multiplying it. So obviously, do your own research on there. But I mean, if you're getting 20% yield on a stablecoin that's been around for a while and is Ethereum's biggest product, I mean, our biggest stablecoin product, it seems interesting.
Well, there was that whole situation on 1010, right? Where was it on Binance?
Yeah,
it was technically depegged, but it wasn't depegged, and there was that whole discussion. I think that's probably the first time most of Solana sort of got to hear about and read about Athena. And unfortunately, it was in a very negative way. But as Finn was saying, Athena are absolute titans over in Ethereum land. So it's great to see that massive projects, DeFi projects, are sort of coming together. Bitwise being in there, I think, is absolutely monumental. And it sort of stands in a bit of contrast, I feel, to the Perps situation that we were discussing earlier, right? Where it's all these teams competing for Solana Foundation's approval, for their attention. And here we are, massive companies have come together, and they're clearly offering something with massive demand.
Well, look, people want yield. People want yield, and if they can get stablecoin yield as well, that's even better because obviously it's great to get staking yield in general, but if you are holding an asset that then goes down 20% in the space of a few days, that yield doesn't offset that loss. So stablecoin yield is one of the more popular things that people are looking for on chain these days. More and more teams are starting to do this. Solstice is another good example, doing it on Solana. You're operating in a similar way to Athena. You're taking delta neutral yield and you're applying that to a stablecoin. Look, great product is going to continue to grow, I think. And ultimately, the more liquidity we have in Solana DeFi, the better, because that can then be used. It can be reborrowed. It can be reused elsewhere in the ecosystem. So this is a reflexive loop that I think goes stronger and stronger with time.
Story number 5 in that case. This one's genuine insight. I think, yeah, insightful, exciting, and monumental for anyone who's been following it, but also critical. I'm going to go ahead and say critical. So headline is Solana's Alpenglow logs 100x finality gain in first community cluster test. all the Giga brains working on this. Massive congratulations. It's been a long time coming, and both on the execution finality side for us degens, and also on the sort of marketing of Solana towards institutions. This is massive. There's also a P token launch on mainnet in this story. Finn, what are both of these really about, and why do they matter?
Yes, so on May 9th, ANZA head of research Roger Wattenhofer announced that the firm had successfully enabled Alpenglow within a community cluster of validators. And we can see there right on the screen, that's had an immediate impact on finality time. Look, if we can make transaction finality on Solana 100 times faster, that's going to be a massive benefit to absolutely everyone. So well done to everyone at ANZA for getting this across the line. The call is now out for other validators to join these testing clusters. So hopefully we can get all this through packed as quickly as possible, and we can get Alpenglow live on mainnet. Now, at Consensus Miami, Tolly actually, I believe, on stage said that they were targeting a Q3 launch for this. So hopefully sometime in the next few months, Alpenglow actually goes live and delivers all these speed improvements that we've been waiting for such a long time. It's very, very exciting. A lot of apps, obviously, are also looking forward to this. All these perps dexes are going to benefit hugely from better transaction finality. But what I'm really excited about as far as Alpenglow goes is that it's going to give validators a much more stronger economic base. So at the moment, it costs a huge amount of money to run a Solana validator. Upgrading to Alpenglow is actually going to drop some of these operation costs. The ballpark figure is kind of about 30% cheaper, I want to say. It's going to go down to around 1.6 SOL per epoch instead of, it's like a bit dramatic more than that, probably about 2.4. I'm pulling numbers out, but that's ballpark figures. So look, if we can make validator operation more affordable, we can squeeze that bottom line lower so that more validators, and especially smaller validators, can operate more economically. I think that's a benefit to everyone. That means we can have more small validators. That means we can have better decentralization of the chain, and that can essentially mean that Solana's network security is actually stronger and faster with that 100% improvement. Otherwise, P token is the other network improvement we got recently. That's not in this article here, but came later in the week. Essentially, we're getting a 96% reduction in compute costs, which leads to more efficient programming, more efficient transaction packing, and we can actually squeeze more transactions into each block, and Solana can be more effective, more performant there as well. So absolutely huge infra improvements going through Solana right now. Make sure that you're reading up on this, because in a year's time, these are going to be the moments that people look back on and say, this is the 0 to 1 moment that took Solana even further. Thomas, what are you most looking forward to trading or doing if we have 100 times faster transaction finality?
Surely perps.
Surely perps.
I mean, it's got to help with perps, right? And it's like I feel like I can feel the IBRL right now, right? Like there is so many different angles where everything is getting faster, better, cheaper, less compute. So I feel like it's an exciting time for Solana. And I mean, with where we're at right now, it's like we're already the fastest blockchain, and then this makes everything that much faster. It's going to be like, increasing finality to 150 milliseconds is insane, right? Like it's 100x reduction. So, even, institutions are looking at this and they're excited for it, right? On the big picture yesterday, Harriet was telling us, she's like, look, she explained Alpenglow to us, like, and she did a very good job with it, but she's explaining this to other institutions, to other buyers, and people are watching this. I'm incredibly excited, but I feel like if you're interested in crypto, this is like the cutting edge of cryptography when it comes to speed. So it's exciting for everybody that's looking into this. So, but yeah.
Absolutely. And the institutions are definitely coming, as she said. Well, most of them are here, but many of them are coming, and it looks great. The optics are great. So massive shout out to all the Gigabrains working on this. All right, we're going to switch over to our last story of the day before we get to the juicy honorable mentions. We've got a stat of the week. We've got the state of Solana in a tweet. This one's a bit of a pivot here. So Magic Eden is who we're talking about. And the headline, as you can see, is that they bet $75 million on Dicey following wallet shutdown and an EVM exit. So things are happening. Former NFT marketplace giant, as you all know. Finn, what's the crux of this story? Are people worried? I'm seeing some sort of question mark comments under the main post. What's the key takeaway here? Is it greener pastures, or is this sort of a bit of a retreat?
I think it's hopefully greener pastures. I think it's the only thing that you can really do is to pivot in this circumstance. Magic Eden, obviously, as OG as it gets as far as Solana goes. They were the the fertile ground. They were the cornerstone of the NFT economy back in the day. Before Tensor arrived and became the leading marketplace, everything was happening on Magic Eden. Culturally as well, Magic Eden has done so much for Solana. So I think whatever they do, people are still going to be interested in what's going on with Magic Eden. In this respect, they have earlier this year, they wound down their wallet. They have sunset EVM and Bitcoin ordinal support on the NFT marketplace. More recently, they've pivoted into TCGs and on-chain collectibles, and now they're doubling down on Dicey, which is their casino and sportsbook platform. So, look, yeah, I don't think this is a step back. I don't think this is a retreat. I think this is a necessary pivot into what founder Jack Lew calls the speculation super cycle. So, I haven't used Dicey. I'm not part of the beta. I'm not really too familiar with the product itself. But look, I think Magic Eden has to do this. I think they can't keep clinging to the glory of yesteryear, and they can't keep running as an NFT marketplace. There's so much more to go out there and conquer, so much more to do. So, look, I wish them all the very, very best. Thomas, were you trading any Bitcoin ordinals on Magic Eden back in the day? Do you think this is the right step forward?
Bitcoin, yeah, I was trading some ordinals back in the day. I liked. Look, I mean, ordinals had what, like a 3-month run. NFTs are not hot. No matter how many I buy or how much I want them to come back, they're just not coming back. So I mean, when you look at the market, everything is gambling except NFTs at this point. So for them to pivot to this makes sense. Like I also haven't really looked into Dicey, but with the way that, I don't know, the society is moving, it's like you can gamble on everything, and having a sports book and a gambling site is probably more desirable than an NFT platform in 2026. What do you think, Jack?
Yep. And you mentioned speculation supercycle, that Trump himself was basically saying this, right? When I think in the White House, they asked him about the $400,000 profit that some insider trading had sort of resulted in. And one of the, I think, active US servicemen were arrested. And they asked Trump, and Trump said, look, the whole world is turning into a casino. And I think, to me, this screams like Magic Eden's now targeting a slightly younger audience with these collectibles, with these cards. I mean, I know it sort of cuts through ages and generations, but I feel like I'm too old to really enjoy this. Yet, if I was, a sort of a fresh 18-year-old degen, as much of a gambler as I was back then, I would probably dive headfirst into something like this. So definitely speculation supercycle.
Yeah, is that what people are doing? It's like it's not Pokemon cards, but it's kind of like that. They're opening packs of cards. I have yet to dive into this, but I understand it's pretty popular, right?
It is very popular. I mean, I get the thrill of it. I do. But yeah, it's not for me. Speculation supercycle. I will gamble elsewhere and continue to lose all of my funds on chain, but cards for the time being, cards are not it for me. Okay, we are going to move into an honorable mentions quickfire round. You guys know by now, our audience members know by now, that this is arguably my favorite part of Finn's newsletter, because there's always something in here that doesn't quite mean what it is. And I love it. Sometimes really spicy headlines come out of it as well. Just before we get to the stat of the week and the state of Solana in a tweet, Finn, quickfire round. What do we have?
Honorable mentions this week. Solana ETFs target strongest weekly inflows year to date of $58 million. The last time that Solana ETF inflows were this high, it was December last year. So the suits are showing up. Thank you very much. IQAI launches KRWQ, a stablecoin pegged to the Korean won. BZ, an on-chain TCG and collectibles marketplace, expands to Solana. MoonPay acquires Dawn Labs, its 7th acquisition since 2025.
Crazy.
Humor Finance launches instant PST to USDC withdrawals. Jito announces Firebam, bringing the block assembly marketplace to Firedancer and Frankendancer clients. USDG supply on Solana surges 143% in 7 days, flipping USD1. Jupiter launches Jupiter Poker, selling tokenized shares in player tournament runs. Proof comes out of stealth, pioneering multiverse markets on Solana. Phoenix Trade launches commodities markets, and Jurassic Finance receives $15.2 million in commitments, oversubscribing the raise target of 200K by 7,644%.
Also insane.
All kinds of announcements going on there. A very, very broad list. Jack, I'm going to throw it to you. What's standing out?
So we just spoke about the speculation supercycle. I'm going to do a bit of a wild card selection here. Jupiter launching Jupiter Poker, I think. It got my attention. I used to play a lot of poker. I really like the game. but then selling tokenized shares in player tournament runs. I mean, it's layers and layers and layers. And again, Jupiter are just shipping constantly. So I can't wait to go and test that myself. And we are going to be, this is a good plug, actually, good plug moment. We're going to be speaking with Haseeb Qureshi next week on The Big Picture, former professional poker player, now GigaBrain investor, great VC. He's a managing partner at Dragonfly. They recently announced a $650 million raise. So curious to find out where those funds might start trickling into some of these on-chain protocols that we interact with. But yeah, for me, it's going to be Jupiter launching Jupiter Poker. I'm excited to go and test that out.
An excellent choice. Thomas, what's standing out for you?
You know, I also can't wait to talk to Haseeb. Used to play a lot of online poker, and that's what got me into crypto. So I'm excited to see that. But dude, I'm honestly excited about the ETF buys. Like these TradFi Chads have just been buying these ETFs nonstop. Like it is impressive the way that they've been doing this. And it's, you know, if you just watch the ETFs and didn't look at crypto Twitter, you know, that would be so bullish, right? Like I love the way that they've continued and maintained the buying of these ETFs. So that's what I'm going to go with. What about you, Finn?
For me, it's going to be proof coming out of stealth. So I am a sucker for any new kind of paradigm. I think anytime something innovative and quirky and interesting that happens in DeFi that we haven't seen before comes out, I think that's where my attention always goes. So multiverse markets, I think other teams will work on this and they're called it impact markets as well. But essentially what we're looking at is people will begin trading what happens to assets in the event that something happens. So for example, what happens to the S&P 500 if Trump loses the midterms? You'll have, you know, a fork branching onto where the price goes if it does, and a fork branching off where price will go if it doesn't. So I see it immediately as kind of a Futaki meets prediction markets kind of platform. We're going to need to wait and see for a bit more docs and a bit more explanations to come out about what that is precisely. But yeah, new DeFi primitives for me is always going to take the cake there. So yeah, Proof Exchange. Check it out.
And that's
Excellent
Squid's
choice.
new project, right?
That
Squid?
is from Squid, yeah.
Cool.
DeFi GigaBrain, love to see it.
Now, stat of the week. It's a chart. What does it say, Finn?
So this stat of the week is our Solana Perp volume overlaid with open interest. So look, as we've mentioned, Perp volume absolutely exploding this week. The last time that Perp volume on Solana was this high was that 1010 crash when absolutely everything got obliterated. So that was forced volume that nobody actually wanted to see. The volume we have now is exciting volume. It shows that, you know, people are trading Perps on Solana. You know, crypto's most popular way to trade assets is finally happening on the retail chain, on, you know, the most performant layer one. Let's be honest. But look, what is standing out to me most importantly is that look at this open interest here. So if we could go back to September last year, open interest was around $1 billion. At the time, this is much more organic to me. So open interest is a lot higher than volume here, which tells me that, you know, people are holding conviction in their thesis. They're waiting for their trades to play out. Whereas here we've got huge volume, but very, very little open interest. So I think, you know, all this excitement around perps is not necessarily because people are actually trading perps. It's because people are trying to farm incentives and they're trying to get their numbers up as much as they can without actually, you know, putting their money on the line to have a trade play out. So
is that also because there's just far fewer people than right before the October 10 meltdown?
I think that's certainly true as well. Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot less people trading on-chain now than there was then. But look, we shouldn't have volume returning to, you know, September, October peak bull market levels with, you know, half or even a third of the open interest that we were having at that time. So look, by all means, go and test out these platforms. But, you know, if you're just going back and forth between two pairs, trying to get your volume up, all you're really doing is paying fees, especially on apps that, you know, aren't actually running incentives. So bear that in mind would be my advice.
Very good advice. Now, State of Solana in a tweet. I love these. Toli's new look, by the way, is brilliant. What do we have here? Get back to work. A classic Toli tweet.
A classic Toli tweet. So on May 14th, Seb Monty tweeted out the DeFi Llama list of volume to open interest throughout perp dexes. And he says, Solana's best perp dex is not even on the board. Who flips that in the next 6 months? Totally coming in saying, get back to work. For me, this is State of Solana encapsulated in a tweet absolutely perfectly. All kinds of drama on the timeline. And here he is, you know, our balded, bearded savior saying, just get back to work, build the apps, build the products, and find that PMF and make people use your apps. Yeah, very encouraging from Tolly, and looking forward to seeing what happens in perps in the next 3 months.
Another prediction question then, because it's the speculation super cycle. When might we see a Solana Perps DEX in the top 5 here? What's the sort of timeline we're looking at? 6 months? Maybe not. 12?
I think if you were to check this graph today, you would see GMTrade up there. GMTrade's reported volume is around 4 billion. Open interest isn't quite there, I think, to sustain it. But look, on paper, if you looked at that list today, you would see GMTrade there. 6 months time, who knows? Hopefully we can actually have a DEX take out that top spot.
TB?
Yeah, I say next 3 to 6 months we get one up there. I'm bullish.
3 to 6 months. Fingers crossed. If anyone in our audience has a very different view, a wildly opposing view to that, if they think, no, it's going to happen in 3 weeks, or it's going to happen tomorrow, or it's never going to happen, let us know. We're curious why you think that way. If you're super bullish, if you're super bearish on Solana Perps, we want to know. Final plug for the big picture. It is every Thursday at 11 a.m. ET. Next week, we are back with Haseeb Qureshi. We have a banger list of guests ready for you until about, I think we're booked now until July, end of July, something like that. So many incredible guests to talk to, from Gigabrains to VCs to Degens. We have people from Foundation joining us. So it's going to be really, really exciting. Do join us at 11 a.m. ET. TB, what's the one question you really want to ask Haseeb next week?
Oh man,
tough one, isn't it?
There's too many. Okay, I mean, he is just like he's a hot take factory, right? Like I feel like you could ask him any question and he has like the hottest take to give back. So I guess he like kind of trained, he like worked under Naval for a while. So I wouldn't mind hearing a little bit about that, and then I want to hear about his poker takes too, because I used to watch him play like super high stakes poker on Full Tilt Poker, like I don't know, what is it, like 20 years ago now. So like, you know, how that developed from there into crypto, because a lot of like the early crypto guys were poker players, right? Like they all like instantly, like it made a lot of sense to them. And then like how he went from just getting into crypto to getting into VC, because I mean, he just raised, you know, over $500 million not too long ago. So love to see how that connected and why it didn't connect for me.
Minerals. I do not have the minerals to play super high stakes. Even if I had the money, I'd probably crumble under that pressure. But that was one of the first conversations I ever had with Haseeb, actually. What did you learn as a professional poker player that you have to use every day in your sort of life as a crypto VC now? And he gave this very eloquent answer. As you can imagine, it was clearly very well thought out. Now, for our audience members, if you do want Finn's full newsletter with all of his deep dives, all the spicy takes, then go to SolanaFloor.com and subscribe to the newsletter. It is delicious, it is free, and you will learn a lot. You will laugh, I promise you. It's my favorite Solana newsletter. And the big picture is, of course, every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern. Finn, Thomas, thank you both very, very much. And I will see you guys next week.
Thanks, Jack. Always a pleasure.
Right. Thanks, guys. Talk to you later.